Are your orchid leaves starting to go dark and mushy at the tips? Or even worse, the whole crown starting to rot? Don't panic. This could be the difference between saving your orchid and losing it forever. Today we're going to walk you through the most common, if not the most dangerous, of problems that your Phalaenopsis is going to face. These dark mushy leaf tips and the dreaded crown rot. We'll take you through step by step on how to identify early warning signs, what causes it, how to safely remove those damaged leaf parts, and what exactly to do to ensure you can save your orchid before it's too late. So let's get straight to it. This is the same orchid that I showed you in the Stop Yellowing Leaves video. I'll drop that in the box down below in case you missed that one. And you'll notice already the leaf has started to dry out a little bit. This is because I've taken some remedial steps because I wasn't able to film this video directly after the previous one. But I'll show you all the steps that I take in firstly identifying the crown rot and each step that I do to treat it to ensure that I can save my orchid. Often some of those telltale signs that you get that you're starting to get crown rot is that you'll start to get a little bit of yellowing right down there in the center of your plant. Perhaps that tiny little budlet, as it's pushing up the new leaf, will start to blacken or yellow like this. The new leaf will start to yellow from the base upwards towards the tip. And then you know that you probably have crown rot. You'll also start noticing that the tips of the leaves are often darken up in color and get softer, if not even a bit mushy. These are all due to fungal or bacterial infections that have got into your plant. And the reasons that they've got there is generally from overwatering. So if you can see your media is damp and wet, perhaps it's decomposed and holding too much water, or perhaps you've just been overwatering, or you've left it in the cover pot standing in water, which is often a problem. So crown rot is generally a symptom of having too much moisture around your plant all the time. So this was an ideal case study to show you what to do. We can see how much algae is in this pot. That's just generally because there's been too much water. We haven't allowed it to dry out enough in between waterings, and that's often why you get so much algae in your pot. So that's also one of the signs you can look out for to check that you're not overwatering. And that will help manage your watering schedule so that you don't get to this point here. So the causes of this crown rot are generally fungal, either Phytophthora or Fusarium, or possibly bacterial, Erwinia. Not that we really worry about their names, we just want to kill them. How do we go about killing them? Well, the first step is always going to have to be reduce your watering. You're going to have to adjust it so that you can allow this media in your pot to dry out. We're going to need to try and give the fungus and bacteria an environment that it doesn't want to live in. We want to reduce the moisture that's being absorbed up into the plant so that we're not helping exacerbate the problem. We don't want to be watering from the top at this point for any reason, not even a misting, because we want to allow these inner leaves to dry out. These bacteria and fungi really don't like dry conditions, and that's what we need to give them. Remember, your plant is going to be hardy enough to survive some drought, if you want to call it that, a dry period, whereas your fungi and bacteria won't last as long. So at this point, you can even remove it from those areas with the higher humidity into lower humidity areas. You can stop the watering altogether and allow it to dry out slightly. And then the very first thing we're going to do is get some nice sharp scissors. We're going to ensure they're properly sanitized. And then we're going to go in and cut our poor little plant up. We'll remove this center leaf. It's the newest leaf that was available on the plant, and that's the one that's died. So we'll go in and pull it out. There we can see we didn't even need to use the scissors, it just pulled out. And we can see that's not looking too healthy. So now we have removed the leaf from the center, which came out nicely, leaving no residues of the leaf itself, so we don't have to try and perhaps remove the second leaf. We now need to treat inside that wounded area. What we're going to do is we're going to take 3% peroxide, and we're going to use this undiluted. This isn't a good thing to use on your plant all the time, but in these cases we can. But we're not going to put anywhere near the root system, because your 3% hydrogen peroxide will damage and burn the roots. Here we have the cuticle, which is going to help protect the plant somewhat, but all that open tissue from where the wound of that infection is what we want to treat with this strong hydrogen peroxide solution. What is going to happen is the hydrogen peroxide is going to oxidize, and that is going to basically eat away the raw tissue and those pathogens that are attacking the plant. A syringe just makes it easy to get into the center of the plant itself without causing you to spill it all over the show. And you can just take a couple of little drops and allow it to soak into the center. You may actually see some fizzing or hear a little bit of bubbling, but that's perfectly okay. That's actually what you want. That's the start of that reaction that's going to eat away at that open tissue, that wounded tissue, that infected tissue. So that will be cleaning that all up and sanitizing the plant. And this you don't have to leave much longer than about 5 minutes, because the reaction takes place so quickly, and once the reaction has taken place, the hydrogen peroxide is basically just water again, and it's going to cause no further damage to the plant. So we're then going to take a little bit of tissue paper, perhaps an earbud or something with a little bit of cotton wool or something, to absorb that moisture away again, because remember, we want to keep as much moisture away from that crown as possible so that we don't get reinfected. So there we go. We can just go in and dry that all up. So once the fizzing and the bubbling has stopped, basically you can just go in and dry up your orchid again, and that's pretty much the crown sorted for now. It doesn't mean it's completely cured yet, but that's just the start. So that's what I'd done initially, was just put a couple of drops of that hydrogen peroxide into the top, just to stop the progress of the disease, so that it gave me enough time to do this video for you. And generally by doing the second treatment like this, it will have sorted out the problem. But what we do now about these darkened tips that are now a little bit mushy and soft, these we want to make sure we remove as well, because for one, we're not sure whether they're infected, and for two, if we do leave them on, they can very possibly become infected, because these aren't going to heal. This has been almost bruised and they're not going to heal, so it could be inviting in disease in decaying tissue. So we're going to have to remove this. Again, with our sanitized scissors, we need a nice sharp equipment for this. And we're going to be cutting below the line of that darkened tissue. We need to make sure we're cutting into fresh tissue, nothing that has any possibility of infection. So we're going to give it about 1 centimeter away from that tissue that's gone dark, and we can see it's nice fresh tissue that we've cut into, so no infection there. Remember, with every cut, re-sanitize. Here again, a nice cut away. And we have our 2 cut leaves of our Phalaenopsis now. None of the other leaves seem to be terribly infected. Here we have just the tip of this one. And what you can also do is, especially if it's just the very tip, is we can go in with our cuts to reform the shape of the leaf again, so we're not getting straight cuts if you don't want to. We just cut a little V of the leaf off, leaving a more natural looking leaf shape. And then what are we going to do now to ensure that we don't get infections in these open wounds that we have now produced by those cuts? Cinnamon. Cinnamon is an amazing product that stops the ingress of fungal and bacterial spores into open wounds. For one, it's a desiccant, so it's going to dry up that area incredibly quickly. And remember, I told you, fungi and bacteria don't like to be in dry conditions. So it's going to dry up that area, so there's less likelihood of them multiplying. And then also it does have antibacterial and antifungal qualities. So it's a 2-in-1 solution to these open wounds. So this is going to, I'm going to do a terrible mess of this, but we'll just take some of that cinnamon onto our finger and rub it along the edge of that leaf. Some people say only do this when the leaf is already dry, but I actually like to do it while the leaf is still wet. While that wound is still open, it's going to allow for that cinnamon to stick properly, and it's also going to dry out that wound quicker. So for me, I always like to do this immediately on wounding my plants. Helps them recover quicker, in my experience. Remember, you don't want to put cinnamon onto those nice roots if your roots are still fresh, because they will dry out the roots. They will absorb water away from the roots themselves. So it's best not to use them on good root volumes of your plant, unless of course you're trying to seal wounds in the roots. At the ends of the roots, should I say. So there we go, all powdered up and ready. All the excess cinnamon we can just wipe off the leaves. We don't want it on leaves that are not infected. Then we can take a pinch of cinnamon and drop it down into that center, so that it's going to cover up that little original growth point that we've treated with hydrogen peroxide already. There we go. And then we'll just leave it like this for a couple of days, allow it to relax. So also remember, when doing this, inspecting your media of the plant and its root volume is extremely important. If your media has started to decompose, or it's holding too much moisture by itself, then it's time to repot. If you have any damaged or rotting roots inside your pot, then it's time to repot. Since we first showed you this orchid, we've taken away the water from it completely. We've removed it from its cover pot, we're allowing it to dry out, and already we can see nice new growth on the tips of those roots. So we're going to allow this to carry on drying out further, which will help sort out some of this algae. And once we have allowed this to dry properly and it needs to be rewatered again, then we'll use some of that garlic tonic to help get rid of some of that excess algae that's in the pot itself. It will also help give that plant the boost it needs to keep growing well. Also, if there are any bacterial or fungal spores in the media that are left over, that garlic water should treat that too, and we shouldn't have any further complications with this orchid. But remember, it is always best practice to repot your orchid after infections like this, because for one, you can't ever completely tell what's happening inside of the pot, even if it's a clear pot, what's happening in the center without opening it out. And for two, you've probably been growing this orchid in the same pot for a while, and it's going to outgrow it anyway. For this Phalaenopsis, I didn't have any Phalaenopsis media available at the moment, and I'd already delayed videotaping this for you guys, and I had to do it today, otherwise that leaf would have just fallen off and I wouldn't have been able to show you what I'm supposed to be doing, and the leaf tips would have progressed further. So I had to get this done immediately to show you guys, and also to make sure that I save my orchid. But this will be repotted ASAP. So we can see crown rot doesn't have to be the nightmare everyone makes it out to be if you catch it early. So keep a lookout for those early warning signs. Get in and treat immediately. Cut away any damaged tissue that may or can be infected at a later point. And most of all, keep away from water for a while. So saving your orchid can be as easy as using a little bit of hydrogen peroxide, 3%. Don't go for higher, then you're going to start causing real problems with burning of your plant. And this is generally available in most pharmacies and a lot of grocery stores. And of course, cinnamon. If you don't already have any of this in your kitchen cabinet, get some ASAP. And it's going to be as easy as that to save your orchid. And if you're unsure of any of those other early warning signs, again, look down at that Stop Yellowing Leaves video in the description box down below, and go check out the Buy Me a Coffee link. Ed posts up a lot of orchid related content there all the time, available for everyone. There is some members only gated content, so don't be shy, sign up, become a member, and grow like a pro. And thank you for watching. If you found any of this information helpful, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and that notification bell, bing bong, to be notified of all our upcoming content so you don't miss out on a thing. Help us grow as we help your orchids grow.